Greetings from the Idiot Box. I'm Allison Lips. Today, Joe Coughlin is joining me. He is a comedian and improviser who created and hosts the movie riffing show Movie Scrapple. He can be seen most Saturday nights as a player in Asbury Park, New Jersey, with Comedy Sports Jersey Shore, where he usually gets home in time to watch Saturday Night Live live. That brings us to today's topic, SNL50. If you don't know that SNL is celebrating 50 years on NBC, you have either been incarcerated for the last 8 months or are listening to the wrong podcast. But let's welcome Joe.
Thanks for having me.
So, we have a lot of ground to cover, and we're not even covering tonight's special of 50
Yeah, yeah.
years. So I'm going to let you choose which one you want to start with. We have SNL50, the Homecoming Concert, which was Friday night. Ladies and Gentlemen, 50 Years of SNL Music, which is Questlove's documentary. SNL 50, Beyond Saturday Night. And Saturday Night, the movie, which stars Gabriel LaBelle as Lorne Michaels.
Yeah, I think in order of the things I've been most excited about having watched, I think the uh, because there's growth that can happen in it. I love the Beyond Saturday Night series.
Okay, so
Um,
we have a winner. We're going to start with Beyond Saturday Night.
yeah,
So, yeah.
I have likened it to ESPN's 30 for 30 series, where you could just jump in on any episode.
Okay.
They're not really linked as you watch them, and you could easily see over like a 50-year span of how you could do more episodes because there's far more stories to tell than they have already covered. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
And someone pointed out that it's not really a series, it's more like four separate documentaries that they
Yeah, I
just
think it's
put
just
under a
presented that
banner.
way. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think of the four, my favorite was the last one, just because it covers. I think it was interesting that the fourth episode was the weird year of season 11,
Yes.
that transition year, and SNL's had many transition years over the 50 years.
Yeah, that's
Um,
why I'm like, they just focused on that one, but that's probably because of that being the year Lauren came back.
Yeah, yeah. You could just as easily cover season six, but I think
Yes.
because Lauren's in charge, he would, sign off on his comeback. Though it does underline a lot of his failures in that year.
Yeah.
I think he had been out in the wilderness of Hollywood for those 5 years from 80 to 85, and
For someone with so much power over television, those 5 years I was going through and I'm like, what did he do during those 5 years? It seems like
Mhm,
he is Saturday Night Live and he owns like 11 different time slots on NBC,
mhm.
which would have
Yeah.
never happened had he not come back.
Well, the Lorne of 2025 is far different than the
Yes,
Lorne of 1985.
yes,
Things have gone much different in the past 40 years than because after the first 5 years, he left because he was burned out. And the entire cast basically followed him, saying, look, if he's not in charge, I can't trust this place. And they had to start from scratch, more or less. I think some writers had carried forward.
yes.
Michael O'Donoghue, maybe,
I
who
mean,
was probably the scariest and dangerous writer of SNL. But
yeah,
I think,
considering Lauren is so obviously the corporate guy, I'm like,
yeah,
wait, how did Michael O'Donoghue get here?
yeah, I think that you well, the the theme of Lorne that you from all the biographies and um, look back at SNL history is that he doesn't like to get his hands dirty. So he does need to have those people who are a bit more, dangerous or who will do things he won't do, but he still approves of. He wants the show to be a little bit of everything.
Yes, which
And
is not
yeah,
something that exists on TV nowadays outside of Saturday Night Live.
it's the last variety show. We watched a little bit of the first episode, which I've seen a few times over the years.
Yeah, I have too.
Um, and it's striking about how much it's in the mode. Well, it's designed in the mode of a variety show of the 70s, while still like it
Yes.
is the countercultural version of that. Much of the way Laugh-In was maybe 10 years before that. Though
I don't
I'm sure
think
Lauren,
Laugh-In is Laugh-In 10 years before that. SNL
it,
debuted
it,
October
it's about
11th,
6 or 7 years, yeah.
let's see.
Um, because the Laugh-In would have been about 67, 68, maybe.
Yep. January
Yeah,
22nd, 1968 to March 12th, 1973.
yeah.
So
So
Saturday
seven
Night
years.
Live
Yeah,
came on about 2 years after Laugh-In ended its run, which
mhm.
Lorne Michaels wrote for Laugh-In, so there is a
Yeah.
connection there.
So by the time Laugh-In ends, it was not countercultural anymore. It was the culture.
There
You know,
is an argument that Laugh-In was never countercultural and it was just
no,
NBC's answer to the Smothers Brothers.
that's true. That's true. It's kind of we're putting on the costume. It's cosplay of the counterculture.
But it was
We have
really counter.
the big flowers and the big hippies and
Yes. If it was
it's what
really
older people think it was.
exactly, if it was really countercultural, there would not have been Richard Nixon saying "sock it to me."
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it's interesting to see though, getting back to, Lorne's wilderness period. He does try another sketch show. He tries the new show, which doesn't really go anywhere. I think sketch shows outside of SNL for good or bad, and I think for the most part because it sucks the air out of the genre, it's probably for bad. Um, I think
Mhm.
that there haven't been any largely successful on that level as
No,
Saturday Night Live.
no, the sketch
Um,
shows tend to be about groups or a duo.
mhm.
So you've got your kids
Yeah,
in the hall. We've talked about Mr. Show in private, which maybe we'll do a future episode on.
yeah, I love Mr. Show, Key and Peele, the Mitchell and
Yes,
Webb.
British though.
Yeah, I think you have a bit of Fry and Laurie, so
Yes,
duos are big. It's and Britain has its own history
culture.
of
Yes,
sketch comedy, and duo acts are huge over there.
right. And we
Um,
can't forget Monty Python.
That's true. I think Lauren, has legendarily explained. I think Lorraine Newman said it was like this is like Monty Python meets something else, and she didn't know what Monty Python was because it hadn't aired in LA when she was out there. So Monty Python was for sure a inspiration to SNL.
Other than the fact that they're both sketches, I don't really see that connection.
Mhm. I think, well, I mean, you look at the first
I think
sketch.
it's because SNL is super corporate and Monty Python was not that.
I don't think 1975 SNL and 1975 Lorne
True.
are anywhere near 2025 Lorne and 2025 SNL.
That is
You look
true.
at that first sketch of SNL, like ever. Michael O'Donoghue, John Belushi.
Hmm.
I would like to feed your fingertips to the Wolverines. That's a straight up Monty Python nod, really.
You'd
It
go
is
back and rewatch it.
incongruous. It's a non sequitur. It's and then he dies, and then you have a transition. And Live from New York at Saturday night is essentially and now for something completely different. It transitions the show and just became a signature of it. But yeah,
True.
I think there were hallmarks of it that they didn't carry through. And I think as the show became better known for political humor, early on there wasn't a ton of it
Which is
of
weird
political.
because Lorne tries to be nonpartisan.
Hmm. Yeah,
There's
I,
a
I think
lot
it.
of incongruities and paradoxes within SNL.
Hmm. Yeah, I think as time goes on, the political humor on SNL is more or less Mad Magazine era, like it's a caricature of things
Yes.
instead of actual satire. Um, and there's elements of satire sometimes on SNL. It's mostly straight up spoof. I
Yes.
think Mad TV probably did spoof better, and more consistently. Talking about Mad,
Yes, and
but
Mad TV wanted to be SNL so badly.
they did. There was that race, of the the '90s of taped versus live, and which was better. And ultimately, I think SNL is an institution which makes it more resilient to a bad year or bad couple years.
I believe Mad TV did last like 10 years. It
It,
wasn't a
it
fly
lasted
by
maybe a
night
dozen
show.
years. Yeah, it was a good run, but I think by the end of it, um,
It ran for
it
14 seasons,
yeah, um,
95 to 2009.
and then it had a reboot maybe a couple years ago on the CW.
That completely flew under my radar.
Same. I didn't. Somebody had mentioned it before, and I was like, "Whoa, I didn't know about that."
Oh, it
Um,
was a reunion special. It wasn't,
oh, okay.
it was the Mad TV 20th anniversary reunion. And it aired on the CW on January 12th, 2016.
Interesting. I mean, there's a lot that came out of people trying to um, recreate Saturday Night Live magic, but
Yes, you can't.
it, it, no, no, I think you can't be Saturday Night Live because Saturday Night Live costs a lot of money.
That is true.
uh,
And
y- I was reading the Vulture article about Lorne and saying that once he's gone, the budget will likely be cut. He is single-handedly keeping it together right now, budget-wise, because it makes no sense budget-wise to stage a large, live weekly show in a skyscraper that requires these huge sets that they have to elevator up on the freight elevator. And tear down. And if you had this big production facility, it would be easier to do, but it just wouldn't be Saturday Night Live.
that
Um,
is true. And they mentioned in the Ladies and Gentlemen 50 Years That Night Live music that Saturday Night Live is in a former music hall where they would record for NBC Radio. So there's
yeah.
a lineage of music that goes through it, and it is a set that is huge and designed to hold a lot of people and big items, but the logistics of it to get set up every Saturday is insane.
Yeah, there are hundreds of people who work on that show.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds. Like it's a lot. And everybody gets, paid. And it's I can imagine I watched the Architectural Digest behind the scenes tour of the set and makeup and
That's
hair.
cool.
And you realize just how much they have to keep on hand, like for just wigs. And they
Yeah.
have to catalog them and store them somewhere,
Yes.
and costumes, and these take up space.
Yeah, I
um
believe it was in the episode of the Beyond Saturday Night. It was, I think, the SNL writers room, a week inside the SNL writers room,
mhm.
where they show the writers going in, talking to the prop department, where they have casts of everyone's head just lying around in case you need it for a sketch.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, I think, and going to that episode, I think the interesting bits about the written, it was called Written by a Week Inside the SNL Writers Room.
Yes, correct.
And it um it's just interesting to watch them produce their own segments, which is not something that if you were writing for Mad TV or another sketch show, unless you were the creator of the show, you aren't necessarily producing these things. You're not
No,
having to source props and tell the various departments what you need. You might not have departments. You might just have a person.
that
You
is
know,
true.
and they'll have to source a costume from somewhere instead of having to make them wholesale, like
In
they
a
do
week.
at SNL. Yeah, and SNL has, I mean, it's the cliche that many people have attributed to Lorne, which is the show doesn't go on because it's ready. It goes on because it's 11:30.
Yes.
And I think that's interesting to see um, how the show over 50 years has kept this structure that worked in 1975, but would have to be like if there was a new Lorne, if there could be another Lorne, if there was
I
a person in that role, they might have to like redo some of these things of like the overnight writing sessions and things like that to be like more sane for people who aren't
I
23 and have no
can't
family.
I can't imagine keeping that schedule.
Yeah.
It's just 3 in the morning, and then we're like, maybe we should, go home and come
Well,
back
I
for
mean,
7.
yeah, people aren't running on cocaine in it's, 2025, or not
Well, they're
nearly as
not
much.
openly doing it.
Yes, there's not a table of it, I'm sure. But yeah, it's more likely Starbucks than it is,
Yes.
anything else.
But
Yeah, I think that you see these people and they, I said to somebody else the other day, which
mhm,
is writing on SNL is a volume business.
yes,
um, you are not writing a genius. Even something that goes to rehearsal, or dress rehearsal, or goes to the live show isn't necessarily great. It just is what got there
right.
over the other things that week. And it is the show is geared up to be kind of the survival of the fittest for that week. This lasted
Yeah,
because it made sense. It got a laugh, or the host really pushed for it, and it
yeah,
made it to dress, and nobody laughed at it, so it didn't continue, or it got a great reaction, and we moved it up to after the monologue.
right.
Uh, and I think that's the story of like the Washington's Dream sketch with Nate Bargatze. Is it would have been a later in the show sketch, and it got a great reaction at dress, and
Mhm.
it moved up, and it hit. I think Lauren's biggest superpower is knowing how to serve the people what they want, at least in a way that makes you forget overall that it's mostly misses instead of hits.
I think this is also why you're a much bigger fan of SNL than I am. I obviously grew up with SNL. I know a lot about SNL. I think mainly because it is an institution, the same way the Tonight Show is an institution. So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't know about it and didn't respect it. But I don't love the show. We're not even done with the SNL50 celebration, and I'm already SNL50'd out.
Yeah, I hear you.
Um,
I think, yeah, I think it can be a lot, and I think the one of the biggest changes in SNL and how people consume it is YouTube.
yes,
Um, and they don't really cover this in any of the media that we have put up there, or they put up for the 50th. But the Lonely Island, the Seth Meyers and Lonely Island podcast, which is a great review of all of the Lonely Island things that have been put out. But when Lazy Sunday hit,
hmm,
and people surreptitiously and secretly and illegally uploaded it to YouTube.
I remember that,
uh,
and NBC was
yeah,
freaking out, like, "What do we do? Take it down now, 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 now,
yeah.
now!" And it's like, but it's like going viral was not a thing then. It
Mhm.
was just YouTube was where people illegally uploaded things, and the
Yeah,
fact
and
that it's
now
become what it is now and not some variation of LimeWire is amazing.
and well, now people can forward and like and share all of their favorite sketches,
Yes.
so that you could never watch SNL. You never tune in at 11:30 on Saturday night, or you never DVR it. or you never watch
Right.
it on demand in whole. But you see a few sketches, and it's like, oh yeah, I know who, I know what this character is. I've seen Domingo, uh,
Oh
but
my,
you
I
know,
have seen that sketch so many times, and I'm just like,
Mhm. But yeah, it's that thing of it allows these moments to live outside of the structure they were created in.
can we
Um,
go and talk about Lazy Sunday some more? Because I
sure.
remember NBC freaking out about it. And then they realized, oh, maybe we should embrace this. So back when iTunes had the free videos, the song of the week,
Hmm. Yeah.
NBC decided we're going to give this away for the week and rather than having it have a life of its own on YouTube, which was a
Hmm.
weird decision in
Yeah, I
hindsight.
think, I mean, you look at when when was Lazy Sunday? Lazy Sunday was the end of 2005, and YouTube was like a baby in 2005. When did they start?
Lazy Sunday was
Um,
2005, really?
yeah, yeah.
I didn't realize that was
YouTube
the beginning of my time in high school. I thought YouTube really became a thing towards the end of it. Wow.
YouTube was founded February 14th. We're in Valentine's. It was founded 20 years ago this week, basically. So
Okay.
we're commemorating that. Nobody commemorated. I didn't hear about any. There were a lot of SNL50, but no YouTube 20. Um,
Which seems like a
and
bigger deal on some level.
like, yeah, I
Like
mean,
SNL is
YouTube
this
as a
cultural,
repository of knowledge.
right? Like SNL is a cultural powerhouse, but it's kind of old school. YouTube is kind of like the way we do things now.
Yeah. So and Lazy Sunday was released December 17th, 2005. So it was that evening's broadcast. I think that I mean you look at it because they're name checking MapQuest, and when's the last time you used a MapQuest, right?
Well, actually, people
Um,
are using MapQuest now because you can rename the Gulf of Mexico
that's fair,
to
yeah.
anything you want.
Just in
So,
time for a resurgence of MapQuest.
yeah, I'm like, okay.
So I think they kind of helped each other because it's like now you have a killer app for YouTube, which is I don't know where else to find this thing that only aired, and I didn't record it, and I don't have the bandwidth to download it somewhere. And
Mhm.
they're cracking down on all the things for stream, for music sharing. Where do I
Right.
get it? And YouTube was a place to at least start to get it before they um, uploaded it officially.
Yeah.
So I think you
Which
wouldn't
took them a
have.
long time to catch on to that.
Yeah, I think they were they were caught off guard. I
Legacy
think they
media
didn't know.
did not respond well to early new media or the
I
internet
mean, who
as we
does?
know it now.
What
Web
what what
2.0, Web
established what
3.0,
established
whatever.
company does? I mean, you
No,
see,
they're stuck in their
eh,
old ways.
it's because it's easy to know how to deal with what already exists, and the other things scare you,
Yes.
and you see them as a dilution of your profit streams.
Right. Which, I mean, unless you just copy things or change things before someone else does it for you. But
Mhm.
rarely do you run into a company that does that. But yeah, so we're celebrating YouTube 20, even though it's SNL 50. I'm still trying to figure out why are we doing SNL 50 now when it first aired in October. And we've been doing SNL 50 the entire season.
Mhm.
So well into like 2004, 2024 to 2025. Like, what are they doing for the actual anniversary? Or is it some, maybe you know this better than I do. Does it have something to do with like the way the seasons run nowadays?
I think they budget for it like that. It is the 50th year. It is the 50th season. I think they probably wanted to have it in season 50, which makes
Okay.
sense. This is all speculation on my part. I've not read
Right.
anything
That
that
would
said that,
make
but
sense, but it's like the timing is,
yeah,
and it might
SNL
be because,
25. Yeah, SNL 25 was in September of 99. So that was at the beginning of a season. That was the beginning of the SNL, the 25th season. So this is more in the middle of the 50th.
right.
Um, and so I think it allows you to have a feast year, like a whole anniversary year instead of an anniversary week. Although
Oh,
this is the week they're commemorating it.
I mean, this is
Um,
also kind of old school, but we are in the middle of a soups month. February, May, July, and November are the soups months. So if
yeah, I think
anyone,
that's huge too.
so if
It
anyone's
underlines how
paying
important that
attention,
is. So,
still, I mean, it is still, but everyone knows how to game the system. So, I
yeah,
mean, we're
I
not,
think it's very likely that you know, there was a hole in the calendar. They said this is where we'll celebrate it. Lauren
yeah,
probably said this is what we want because they were talking about this maybe 2 years ago. Um,
yeah,
a lot
because
of
he's been
the
talking about possibly retiring, though. I'm pretty sure we're all convinced he's going to die on that set.
I you know I think that
The man is
Lorne,
80.
yeah, I mean he doesn't keep the same hours he used to. Um, the Vulture article last week was very clear that after he goes to dinner with the host on Tuesday, he doesn't come back to the office like he used to check in on the writers, and often doesn't really hear the a lot of the sketches and give feedback until either after the table read, and but
Hmm.
more likely not until Saturday when things are picked to
Oh,
go to
wow.
dress or to go to air. But he's good. He is still a writer at heart, and still does write.
Yes.
He is, and I think that because people don't see it as much, and because he's not the lead writer in anything, people overlook his instincts on that. Whether or not he understands the thing that they're spoofing, I think he understands the music of humor.
Yes.
Um, and I think that's more important sometimes. It's like, okay, Bowen, you understand this very specific TikTok trend. I'm not on TikTok. I've never
Mudang.
done TikTok. Yeah, Mudang or Rachel Sennett or whatever. We'll have these very specific things that he whatever he doesn't understand.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
think he's on TikTok.
no, but he understands that it's important to people who aren't him.
Yes.
And he hires people to represent younger people. There's like I'm constantly surprised in a very positive way at how Sarah Sherman and Bowen Yang have thrived on the show in recent years. They're essentially like a very key part of the show at this point. Um, and they represent a youth movement, that will pop up every few years of like what's the new trends, what are the people I need in order to, um, to plug into these things.
Yes.
It's like if Lauren can't be, plugged into the tastes of today, he can hire the people who are,
That is
who
what
could
he's
tell
very good
them,
at.
yeah, he could tell them, okay, you really need to get this band or this musician on the show because they'll do great numbers. And of course, the charts will tell you that too. And I'm sure their management will reach out and pitch them for the show. But he's been very canny about bringing people on and knowing um, this is someone we need to have host, or this is someone we need to have as a musical guest, or to cameo. I think that's still something he's good at, um, signing off on these things.
So we've talked about inside the writer's room. We've talked about the weird year. We have now the audition process, which it gave us a look at people like Amy Poehler talking about what their audition was like, and they watched their auditions, which a
Yeah.
lot of them were like, "Oh,
Do I have to?
do I have?" Yeah, exactly.
That's got to be nerve-wracking. I think it brings you back to the moment when you were at your most vulnerable because it's the closest you knew you got to really being nationally relevant. Um, and I was picking up their energy. It was just pure anxiety again, even
All of
all these
them.
years later. Even all these years later. There are a few there who like Polar said she pretty much knew she had the job because
Yes.
Tina Fey, you know, it was the fix was in there. But for the most part, they you don't know what they're looking for, and
No. And
sometimes
Bowen
they don't know.
Yang auditioned, what, three, four times before Lauren said
Hmm.
yes,
Yeah,
which I was surprised that someone got so many chances.
I
I,
think if you perform strongly and you stick in someone's memory and you didn't make it, and it was just
yes,
like, well, this is the year we needed somebody to fill in this role because
that
we
could have
lost
been
this
it.
cast member who was this kind of utility player. You are casting the United States. You
True.
are casting, and the show has been poor, to say the least, at reflecting diversity over the years, and I think that's something that absolutely they should cover in a future documentary. Legendarily for the first 5 years,
That's not going
with
to be an
women.
officially. That's
Well,
not going to be an officially sanctioned documentary on
you,
SNL and diversity, and
you don't know. I think at the very least, it's something people have talked about over the years.
that is true. I mean, they didn't
And
even do a
and
documentary on Weekend Update
mhm.
yet.
Well, and
They
I think that's I came up with a list of shows that I would pitch if I were king of the documentary unit at Peacock. Of
want to
like,
pitch them now in case we send this to Peacock.
oh yeah, yeah, why not? These are all free. I do not own ideas because you cannot trademark ideas or copyright ideas. It's only the expression of the ideas that can be trademarked or copyrighted. So,
We don't have the
um,
connections yet.
no, not yet.
Yeah.
Maybe in 20 years after we've matured like YouTube. I think the obvious one that jumped out to me, obviously, Weekend Update would garner its own.
Yes.
I think though, you almost could do one on Norm Macdonald's run at Update
That is
because
true.
I think that's marked not only by his tenure there, but his ouster. It was probably the most public firing of a cast member from SNL ever.
And just
And
Chevy being Chevy on SNL.
yeah,
Another
I mean,
documentary there.
I think there's aspects of that have been talked about over the years that if they're not going to do women as a subject, like you say, that they won't cover with Chevy. But I
Well, they
think
might after he's dead because there's no love lost there.
and you can't
His
libel a
Comedy
person who's
Central
dead.
roast, people didn't even show up to tell them how much they hated him.
True. Yeah, I think, well, I called the Norm Macdonald documentary. I have a title for it. It would be Norm Macdonald Gets Fired and O.J. Simpson is Guilty of Double Homicide, the F. Don Ohlmeyer Story. It's a long title. It might not fit in the old style TV guide, but I think it covers the bases that you want to cover of Norm's tenure, which
Yes.
overlapped the OJ trial perfectly.
Yes.
I think if you were to do if you did season 11, which they did, Lauren comes back here. You should do a season 5 to season 6 um, episode about the Dumanian year ish. Uh,
Yes.
and then Ebersol taking over. So that was a year of craziness, but it also is marked by the rise of Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
So but there's cast members there in that first half of season 6 that were like they were on SNL. Like Laurie Metcalf was on for like a cup of coffee on SNL. It's like,
Yeah, there's a
yeah, she
few
did a pre,
people where I'm like,
yeah, she did
and
a
then
pre-tape,
I
but
was doing research, and like Michael McKean was, because I'm watching Better Call Saul, was on SNL as host and musical guest before he joined the cast.
yeah, I think he would be the first and maybe only person who did that.
I think he is the
Um,
only, which is just a weird. Like you're
yeah,
well enough to host, well known enough to host.
yeah, I yeah, this is as the Folksman with the other Spinal Tap folks that they later made into A Mighty Wind. Um, yeah, I think season 6 would be a great documentary. I want to see more people talk about Gilbert Gottfried. I love Gil, and he's missed for sure. You could do one about Smigel and TV's Funhouse.
That is
I
true,
think that's an influential series on there. Um,
definitely.
I I think that you could do one about when a celebrity meets the person they play on the
That's
show.
true too. You could also do the
Um,
Five Timers Club.
yes, that uh, SNL at the movies. So from
Mhm.
Blues Brothers to MacGruber, covering all those movies and even ones that people forget exist, like It's Pat, the movie. And the underrated Stewart Saves His Family. I love the Stuart Smalley movie. I think it was underrated. Uh, Maybe one about commercial parodies. I think
That's
that the
true.
production of commercial parodies, there were commercial parodies in the first episode. I think there were a few on the first episode of SNL, and there's one every week. It just is part of
Yes.
the fabric. Plus,
Mom
it's good.
jeans.
Mom jeans, yes. Happy Fun Ball is one of my favorites. Uh, but yeah, everybody has their own favorite uh, commercial parody. And the other thing that always struck me was the go-to sketch, other than talk shows, which is easy because it's direct to camera and it's you can come up with um, other characters to pop into the to a sketch, would be game shows. SNL has covered game shows probably more than anything other than talk shows.
True, there's two
Um,
different Jeopardy parodies.
More than that,
Well, I'm
because
thinking of Black
yeah.
Jeopardy and then Will Ferrell as Alex Trebek.
Mhm.
I'm
You you you
not
had
deciding.
you had was Jeopardy 1999 in the first 5 years, the original
Yes.
cast. You had
Which would have been the
there's a bunch
original
of
version of Jeopardy. That would have been
would have
before
been
Alex
Art
Trebek.
Fleming. Yeah,
Yeah.
would have been Art Fleming. So it was like a look into the future of SNL. Of sorry, of Jeopardy. But yeah, they've done Family Feud since the family. There was a Family Feud sketch with the
Oh
Coneheads.
yeah. Oh yeah,
So
there
they've
is
been
Family
doing
Feud.
that, and they did it as recently as last year with Steve Harvey. And then of course there's the
Oh
parody
yeah,
game
because Kenan
shows, and
Thompson plays him.
yeah, he sure does. You just get him, put that suit on him, and he's
The
and a bald cap.
mustache.
Yep. Yeah, the one he did with Chance the Rapper, very funny. Um, yeah, I think that I think that would be a good one. I think it would be interesting to see like a documentary about um, the Land of Gorch um,
Oh,
series from the first season because
Jim Henson and
Jim Henson, yeah,
notoriously
and
mistreated by the cast, specifically
with
Michael O'Donoghue.
who referred to them as the mucking Fuppets. Uh,
And if
yeah,
Sad Night, whoa, the movie is to believe.
I will not write for felt is another legendary quote. I think it is a footnote in SNL history,
Yes.
but I think it is a very pivotal point in Muppet history.
Yes.
I think it is forgotten because uh, it didn't go as well as it could have because they weren't allowed to write for themselves. It
Right.
I think that had it not been for that, the Muppet Show um, wouldn't be the same memory that we have because that was the year after
Right.
SNL.
Also, I was recently at the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens, New York, and they have the world of Gorch there with the Muppets
Yeah.
and I I believe, yeah, no, Big Bird's there, Sesame Street characters, it's anything Jim Henson
Mhm.
is there. And definitely check it out if you're in the area or can take the subway to that.
Make your way to Astoria.
Yeah, make your way to Astoria. It's a fun museum.
Yeah, I had seen Labyrinth there. Um, that was a fun night. Yeah, they do a lot of series there with Muppets, but and I'm sure they've done some SNL things recently with the 50th popping up. I think there's just a million stories you could tell because there's been maybe just under 200 cast members over the 50 years. Um, I
Yeah,
think every one of them has a story, positive, negative, or a little bit in between. I'm sure most of them are in between. Um,
right. And then there's the
Not
people who
everybody
went,
can be, yeah.
there's those who went nowhere after the show.
I think that's a built-in problem of SNL, isn't it? If you're really good at sketch comedy, and that's the thing you do best, the best you can do is
Yes, it's
SNL.
SNL.
It is not a skill that automatically translates to other things.
No,
Obviously,
it's
it
not.
can be a building block. Tina Fey has done very well for herself in episodic television and film. But I think that whether you're a writer or you're an actor, it is the epitome of sketch comedy. And it's a shame that that's kind of all there is. I liken it a bit, and maybe this analogy doesn't work for a lot of folks, but back when WWE was the only wrestling company,
Yeah.
and it does better when there's competition. It does better when they have to be a little more scrappy.
Yes. I also think that sketch comedy isn't taken seriously unless you're a comedy nerd.
Hmm. Yeah, well, there's the fight between whether or not they do sketches or skits. I see people online refer to the pieces they do on SNL as skits, and as a comedy person, I mean, I very much these are sketches. A skit is something you do at a summer camp when you're just making stuff up on the spot with barely any costume or other thought. It's much more
We have a
informal.
Burger King crown. That's what we got.
Yeah. Whereas SNL, they put thought, money, and time into these things to craft them. And I think that at least some of the people who write these things are offended when they see sketch sullied with the word skit.
I don't know why you would call them skits because skits does seem not defensive, dismissive of
Mhm.
what SNL actually does. Like you
Yeah,
said,
and there's no
it's
skit comedy.
no,
It's
there's
sketch
not.
comedy.
The skit is like a thing your son does for his third grade talent show. It's not what adults do on TV.
If you are getting paid for doing it or you are charging people to watch it, they are not skits. For all the people who do live comedy, live sketches, you are for sure, whether you're getting paid or not, and you're probably not, uh,
Let's be honest
at
here.
least not very well. Then you're absolutely doing sketch comedy. Yeah, I don't like the word skit, and I'm
No, I
sure a
don't
lot of the
either.
folks who work on the show do either. What was have you covered all of the Beyond Saturday Night? No more cowbell.
No, yes, we need more
Yeah.
cowbell.
Yeah, I think that is of all of the four, I think that one was the surprise for me
That
because it was going very in depth on something that lasted very briefly on TV.
I don't like the more cowbell sketch, but this was my favorite of the four documentaries in the Beyond Saturday Night
Interesting. Yeah.
because
Um,
it deep dived. even went with the Blue Oyster Cult. They were interviewing them.
Yeah.
I find that I like Will Ferrell more as a person than I do as a comedian. Like he's
Hmm.
a cool dude, but his comedy taste and mine don't align. And it was great to see Dave Grohl and Josh Homme talk about this sketch. Like now I have skit in my head. But these are very clearly sketches talking about the more cowbell, and of course Jimmy Fallon is cracking up in the sketch because that's what Jimmy Fallon does.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that though, uh, to his defense, I will say that probably as time went on, when people knew they could make him go,
Yeah.
they would lean into it, and
Yes.
that
Yes.
uh, I think he tried. He tried most of the time to keep it in, but he was an easy target for especially Will. You
Yes.
know, Will would go after like in the Love Us sketch and everything. He would make people go, and he was good at it.
Yes.
But I think, yeah, it was interesting to see a deep dive from everybody involved except for two people. Um, the notable exceptions being Christopher Walken himself, and
Yes.
Horatio Sands, who was missing for reasons that you'll have to Google, folks. Uh,
Oh, ooh, yeah. I think
yeah.
I know what you're referring to. Let me double check Horatio Sands. We're gonna go. Oh, that is way worse than I thought it was.
Yeah, I don't know if he was. It was interesting. I was watching the concert on Friday,
There is
seeing James
alleged
Franco there.
there's alleged sexual abuse involved.
Yeah, uh, yeah, it was interesting to see James Franco at the concert on Friday, and then the next shot is Seth Rogen. So, and they're haven't spoken in years.
Yeah, that
Um,
concert was amazing. But let's finish the
yeah,
documentaries and
for
then
sure.
we'll move on to
So yeah,
SNL Homecoming.
more cowbell had like the season 11 had that framing mechanism of this Gene Frankel person if he existed, and how he
What
died.
if he does?
Yeah.
Joe, he does.
Oh, he's real in my heart, and that's the most important place that I have. Uh yeah, I think what's great about the more cowbell sketch is that it really um underlines how different the speed can be between dress and show, the live show. That Walken didn't go hard on
No.
the emphasis on parts of the sketch, and I don't think anyone told him what to do. I think he knew instinctively from
Yes.
the reaction, because that just goes back to like
And they
you know
were
you're
talking, some people save themselves for the live show.
you have to, especially if you're the host, because the host for most weeks is the person who's in the most sketches. And if you don't protect your energy, then you're not going to make it through those 90 minutes. And it
And
goes by, I'm sure.
the original sketch that they did at Dress, completely different. Like, it was not great.
Yeah, it was
Will was
flat.
wearing a completely different shirt. It wasn't as tight. He wasn't going in it as much,
Mhm.
dancing around with his cowbell.
Yeah, I think if you know, I think probably by the time they had going into dress, they knew they could go with it, and they would knew it probably be picked for the live show. So they probably saved some things. I
Mhm.
think that Will Ferrell's instinct to make that shirt tighter and shorter
Yes.
was genius, because he knew how he wanted his body to move in
Yes.
space. And that's just, I mean, you go to his post 9/11 sketch with wearing the American flag underpants, him being patriotic. Um, I think he's not afraid to. Um, to put it all out there in the service of a
No,
laugh.
no, he's
And
not.
that's what these things need sometimes. It needed that little extra, and
Okay.
Walken gave a little extra.
Who was
I
the
think,
original? Wasn't it like Norm Macdonald was supposed to be the band director or
yeah,
producer?
I think it had been written for so what was the week that more
Oh, it was
cowbell?
originally Woodblock and Norm Macdonald.
Yeah. And it just goes to show you, because this was after Norm was fired, and he'd come back, I think, for um, to host. Maybe am I right about that?
Right, as
Yeah.
Lauren put it in the music documentary, no one's been banned from SNL because we're too opportunistic to ban anyone.
Yeah. I think that yeah. So it was first Norm hosting when he hosted in October of '99. Um, but I guess the energy would have been different for that. I
Right.
think, though I
Also,
get why you
Woodblock.
would. Yeah, I
Woodblock
think
is just not it.
that goes to the musicality of things too. It's that certain words are funnier
Hmm.
than others. Comedy words, what, there's no math to it. It just feel. And there's some guidelines, I'm sure, but it is just woodblock. Just seems more normal than cowbell.
Yeah.
Uh, because when you think cowbell, it's like, oh, I'm thinking a cow. I'm thinking that I hear the sound more than
Yes.
the thump of a wood block.
Right.
And yeah, it's more evocative too. I think
Right.
that yeah, I think it was a great deep dive, especially since they had the footage of the putting the
They had a
set together
lot
and
of
tearing it
footage of
down.
just one sketch. Like,
I
I
think they
wonder
just
if
keep
they
it
have
rolling.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what they have on other iconic sketches.
You could do an entire YouTube channel of sketches that were cut at dress, that might still be good. They just
Yes.
didn't get a reaction. I mean, Seth Meyers does the Second Chance Theater on his show.
But
Uh,
there also are times when the East Coast and the West Coast don't even get the same show because a sketch bombed on the East Coast, so they put in one from Dress on the West Coast. At least they
mhm.
used to. I know now both coasts tend to get it live at the same time,
Yeah, yeah. I was out in
which is
Vegas,
a
and
recent thing.
yeah, but also means you got to be mindful of the fact that the show airs at 8:30 on or starts
Right.
airing at 8:30 on the West Coast, which means you have different FCC guidelines that you have
Mm-hmm.
to honor. And I wonder how that has changed the show a bit, because
I
you're
do
you're
too.
not you're not post watershed there. Um, yeah.
No, and they've got to be more careful on the swearing. I wonder if something like Dick in the Box would even get off the ground nowadays because, as you said, 8 o'clock on the West Coast, there could be children watching.
Yeah, I think I mean,
I mean, there were
it's all
always
about.
children watching because we were the ones staying up late on
Hell,
Saturday
I did.
nights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But, actual children watching and not staying up late at 8
yeah.
o'clock.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that I started watching the show when I started like dedicatedly watching the show when I was about 11 or 12. So that would have been around like the Carvey, Hartman, Nora Dunn, John Lovitz era
Okay.
of SNL. And then Mike Myers joining, and later, but definitely like the Dennis Miller Weekend Update, while still being aware that there was a whole show before that, and
Yeah.
but it kind of was, and I think a lot of people look in as like the second golden era of SNL is the Dana Carvey and Phil Hartman and Jan Hooks, and uh, you know uh, cast, which kind of really saved the show, until they started leaving in the early 90s.
So, like, between the original and between the ones you just mentioned, you've got Eddie Murphy,
Hmm.
We keep mentioning Norm Macdonald. There are casts between that had superstars that burst out because of SNL.
Yeah, I
So,
think
and
it's
SNL is the type of show where everyone, like the cliche is everyone likes the cast that was in
when
at
you
the
were
time they were
12.
in high school, or what when they were in high school. That's
Yeah.
their cast. That's their favorite cast. It peaked when you were 16.
I think that's absolutely true. I think there's definitely something to be said for that. I think that it's like um your sense of humor is also developed by that too. You are, your taste in music. What you consider good music is determined
Yeah.
by what was cool and what you enjoyed when
When you
you
were
were,
13.
yeah,
And
because
they've done
pop culture means the
scientific
most.
studies on that's like when your brain like starts forming and finding what it likes.
Your taste,
Yeah.
it's very much formed by that, and what is cool and what you feel is cool, and then what you feel is not that. Is everything after you stop paying attention to what was on the charts. There used to be a time when I knew everything that was on the charts,
I know.
and now I'm surprised watching the concert on Friday. It's like there's a bunch of stuff I don't know anything about. I recognize Bad Bunny as a great artist, but I don't know his songs.
Hey,
Um,
I knew everyone who was there. I mean, but I don't may not know their songs, but
mhm,
I knew everyone who was there. I'm still sort of like David Byrne dances
mhm.
strangely to me.
He's been doing that since the late 70s.
I know that's
So
just what he
he's
does.
yeah, that's just his with big suit and everything. Yeah, I think we could transition to the concert too. Um, I thought it was fantastic from top to bottom. I thought that
Yes,
what
it
they set
was.
out to do, they accomplished it tremendously.
There was
Um,
also a joy with that concert that you don't get in similar situations because those situations are usually all these celebrities coming together in order to raise money for some national tragedy. Whereas
mhm,
this was 50 years of SNL music, and look at all these artists. SNL brought hip hop to the world, it brought punk to America's living rooms at a time
mhm,
when punk wasn't a thing and corporations weren't selling it to 12-year-olds in their
yeah.
rebellious stage. And it was an incredible concert. It was a very long concert, though. Did you make it
Mhm.
out to King of Prussia?
I didn't get a chance to, unfortunately, but I can only imagine how the sound would have been
Yeah.
from there. It was long, but I do think that you get to do that when you've been on the air for 50 years.
I also don't know
uh,
who they would have cut.
that's so true. I mean, when like everybody, I think, has a different highlight of who like the best artist on the bill would have been. For me,
Hmm.
it'd be hard for me to say anybody other than Post Malone Nirvana um, number, which was the big surprise of the night. Everybody
Right.
else had been kind of rumored or talked about, but Dave Grohl was listed on the lineup, and so was Post Malone, but they were never mentioned in the same breath. And you can imagine, Dave doing any number of things that
Yeah.
evening. So
He
when
could have brought the
Sandler
Foo Fighters. It would have been.
yeah. So when Sandler announced, post Nirvana, I'm like, whoa, okay. And it's the first time I think Nirvana has come together in 30 years,
It's
30
not.
plus years. No? Okay.
No.
Um,
I think they did one at the Grammys or at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something. But it's rare. It's maybe
yeah.
only the third or fourth time.
But it was very important for someone who was of high school age in
Yes.
the grunge era to have seen that. But you'd easily see other people like Lauryn Hill with her performance with the Wyclef Jean or Cher, who looks amazing. You
yesterday.
know, and but not. I mean, let's not the B-52s.
Oh
They are
yes,
in their 70s as well, and they looked and sound great. That they brought the house down with Love Shack. It was
yes,
a very crowd pleasing evening, as well it should be. You could pick from anything. You're going to pick things that are going to hit.
yes.
And Yeah, I think I saw some people say that maybe Cher should have ended the evening. I think you end with a rocking number. I don't have a problem with Jack Black. Um,
You
sorry,
mean
Jack
Jack
White.
White?
Yeah, Jack White. I would not have enjoyed Jack Black ending the show.
That would have
Uh,
been very
yeah,
different.
Jack White.
And
Jack White ending the show, I thought was good. I think that overall, even though there have been other genres of music on SNL, the foundation of it really is a rock and roll show.
yes,
Um, I think that there are other genres and artists who have been very successful on it and done fantastically well. But I think there is it's no mistake that SNL in 1975 is also the CBGBs and punk,
yes,
very much in New York at that time, and I don't think that's a mistake. It's still kind of you know they cover a bit of fear in that season 6
yes.
documentary. I would have loved to have seen Fear do Beef Bologna on the SNL homecoming concert.
No, I
Um,
was like, that would have been fantastic because
yeah, or at least somebody covering it. Um,
in the movie documentary they were talking about that, and like the members of Fear are what in their 70s now.
yeah, yeah.
Like it's just this
Uh,
guy with like a giant mop of white hair talking about beef
and
bologna and
he's
grabbing his
better known to a
crotch.
lot of. He's a better known at this point to most people as the dead body from Clue. So, I think that it's great that
Yeah,
it was really
leaving.
it was very moving actually to see how much he cared about his friend and misses his friend John Belushi, who gave him that opportunity. We do forget, and that's something um, you know. You've been on the show, you've been on the air for 50 years. You will have lost people, and
Yes,
that will be covered tonight. We're recording this to the day of the anniversary show.
yes.
And you will see tributes to those who are gone, just like there were at the 40th and the 25th.
Yeah, I think there's going to be
Um,
waterworks tonight because there's definitely going to be a montage of various. Like,
for
there's going to
sure,
be Chris Farley falling on a table. There's definitely going to be Phil Hartman.
and I think that when they did the 25th, Phil had just recently been killed, and so the wound was palpable then, and I think it's still very much there and
I
won't go
think
away.
because of how he died, that
Yeah, it
it's
was
not like the drug overdoses are sad, but were
mhm.
foreseen in a lot of the cases.
Yeah,
Whereas Phil Hartman, his wife killed him.
he was just ripped away from us, just like that. And in some ways, Norm Macdonald was too, because he had kept it secret.
Yeah,
Um, and I think this will be the first anniversary since his passing. So I think that'll be something that people will talk
yeah.
very movingly about.
Norm Macdonald's posthumous stand-up special on
Hmm.
Netflix. Kind of
Yeah,
hard.
I
It's a
think
weird and hard watch because it's his friends watching him do comedy into a webcam after he's passed.
yeah, it's kind of a message to the world. When you don't, it's a message in a bottle. You don't know anyone will find it. You don't know anyone will care. But people did care about Norm a lot. I'm glad to. I'm very much anticipating, a nice tribute to Norm and all the folks who have left us. I know that during the concert on Friday there was a shout out by Eddie Vedder to a lot of the folks who had passed, and
Gilda.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I think
which
that
was also a shock. I think its time has faded the wound because that
mhm.
is what, about 30, 40 years at this point when Gilda
um
Radner died.
she would have gone maybe at the end of the 80s, so 88, 89. I know that yeah,
Um, yeah, let's see. Yeah,
she
89
dies
she
in
passed.
yeah. Um
So yeah, it's been over 30 years at this point, 30, about 35.
yeah, I think though, Gilda and John will always be, because they were the first of the originals to go. Um,
Yes.
have any others passed since then from the original cast? I don't think anyone else has from the first. As you think of the original, not ready for prime time players. Um, I think that's
Grant Curtin's
um,
still alive.
yeah. I think that's
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well,
I would be interested to see, the other folks. I think Denitra Vance rarely gets mentioned. She was very briefly there in the early '80s, but the first black female cast member of SNL definitely should be remembered. Jan Hooks has, she was a foundational member of her cast, utility player for like every woman character you could think of. She would play during her tenure. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how that shakes out. I mean, I know it's always a tone shift in a 3 hour celebration of your history, but you have to mark that as well.
I mean, the Oscars and the Emmys every year, the m- m- mer- memorandum.
Lin Memorandum, yeah, Lin Manuel Memorandum. Uh, Yeah, I think very maudlin. No, I think it'll be cool to see that, and it'll also be cool to see what characters they feel are the ones they should bring back.
Yeah.
I was there on the day they did the 25th anniversary,
Oh,
um,
cool.
and because I was going to see a movie at the New York Film Festival because it was September '99, and we decided to do the tour of 30 Rock, and so we did the
Mm.
NBC studio tour, and they bring you up to 8H. So we were there behind the glass, and they were like, "Well, if we're all good, we can watch a few minutes while they rehearse." And it was the sketch where it was it was Dan Aykroyd and Lorraine Newman and Bill Murray and Paul Schaefer doing a Nick the Lounge Singer uh, sketch. It was the cold open, as we would
Okay.
find out later. And I was just like, we could have been here anytime ever, and we would never have seen this. And it was just
That
a
is
core memory for an
extremely cool.
SNL fan of like me. And it was great to see Bill Murray and Paul Schaefer do the Nick character again. With Anna Gasteyer and
Maya Rudolph.
Maya Rudolph and Cecily.
Yes.
Anna Gasteyer, as an aside, Anna Gasteyer was like the MVP of the concert that night. She was in
I
so
know.
many
And
bits of
she's
that
not the
show.
best known of all of the cast members,
She's
but she
not,
is
but
solid.
I mean, she has that Broadway pedigree, having played Elphaba on Broadway. So it's she's people forget how great she is. Anna
Yes.
Gasteyer is just she could do so much, but like playing Martha Stewart and doing the Marty and um, sketch with the songs.
Yes,
I
with
think
Will.
that was just I think that was tremendous.
It was.
she was all over the place that night,
She was. I
which made
think of the SNL cast members, she was the highlight of that night.
yeah. I mean, Jimmy began and ended it, but it's hard to say he hosted it because he
I
didn't
know they
really.
say he hosted it, but he came out, he did the Blues Brothers, was
And
out
then he
of
said
breath
good.
by the end, which justifiably and understandably. So we're not
Yeah,
holding that against him. But he's trying to host this show while like, I'm out of breath. Can't Okay, next. And it's
I mean,
like,
my
okay,
problem with my problem with that whole number though was you still have Dan is still around. You could have brought in Jim Belushi. You could have
yeah.
brought in John Goodman. They are living Blues Brothers.
Yeah, there was no part of
It
the
just
Blues
undermined that
Brothers.
you didn't have that magic, and it was a poor and also like when you think of the
Yes.
Blues Brothers, you don't have a solo person perform that.
No.
It's a double act. It should
Yes.
always be two people, and there should have been somebody else opposite Jimmy doing that.
Yes.
So I thought it was a bit self-indulgent if he chose to do that, or if it was assigned to it.
I
I'm
mean,
not gonna
Jimmy Fallon is like the
being
king of
self-indulgent. Yeah,
self-indulgent.
that fair enough, fair enough. But I think that I mean it is a very iconic musical moment.
Yes.
But so I
I don't
get
think
why
it
you would
needed to
open
be
with it.
recreated. I think they could have just shown a clip from
Hmm.
an old
Yeah, or you could have
the
started with the
movie,
clip,
or yeah, or a
started
clip.
with a
Yeah.
clip, and then brought in like a existing act because I think there was a bit of that throughout the night of like Eddie Vedder doing the Michael Bolton part of Jack Sparrow.
Yeah.
Eddie Vedder was all over the place. David Byrne was all over the place. So there
Right.
was a lot
Lady
of
Gaga also.
yeah pulling double D. I was surprised that they teased Shallow
Yeah.
in the Lonely Island medley start, and then
Which,
she
where
performs it.
was Justin Timberlake? Like, he exists.
Yeah, I guess he
Like,
has
you
things
couldn't
to do.
get Justin Timberlake to support his friend.
He's a busy man. I don't know what to tell you, Allison. He's a very busy man.
Also, they could have done three-way, which actually had Lady Gaga.
Yes, yes, and
Which,
I think she filled in admirably. She's one of the best performers ever. But
yes.
yeah, and I think it was great that it built. It's like, are they just gonna have Yorma and Akiva cupcakes the whole? And yes, they were cupcakes the whole the number. Uh,
Was
but yeah,
Parnell rapping?
I mean, Parnes as a rapper is just always a delight, just because
Yes.
you don't expect it coming out of him.
No, you
I,
don't. And it's like, oh, you're actually good.
mhm. I think it goes into and we could talk a little bit about the SNL music documentary
Yes.
because we had talked a little bit
So why don't
before.
we do a break here
Okay.
because we still have the SNL music documentary and Saturday night. So for those of you who are watching this, thank you. Please join us for the next episode of Greetings from the Idiot Box. I'm Allison Lips and Joe Coughlin.
England. Yes.
Coughlin.